My name is Abel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ethio College Prep. What we do is we guide students through the American and Canadian college application process. Primarily, our best product is our ACT tutoring products. Private ACT tutoring and ACT course አለን. It's our best products out there. ስለ ኢትዮ ኮሌጅ ፕሬፕ የምታውቁ ከሆነ you guys have probably learned about that. Personal experience, I learned at University of Buffalo. And I studied computer science and started ECP back in 2019. So that's me in a nutshell. Let me pass it off to Kadus. Kadus, quickly, if you can introduce yourself. Kadus is one of the panelists who has been accepted to Yale.
Hi everyone, my name is Kadus Dawit. I am a high school student at Andinet International School here in Ethiopia. And yeah, nothing really more to say. I'm a high school student here in Ethiopia. I am graduating soon from Andinet International School. I enjoy football and watching movies, if that counts as an introduction. And I would like to pass it on to Nahum Siyun.
And apparently a Wolfsburg supporter by proxy or mainly.
I'm not a Wolfsburg supporter by any means. I just like the shoe because it's comfortable.
Good to know. Good to know. Now you may proceed.
All right. So hey guys, my name is Nahum. Here, high school student here in Ethiopia. I attended ICS Addis. Be attending Yale next year in the fall. What do I enjoy? Also, I'm like a very I'm also a soccer supporter, so to speak. So I'm a huge Liverpool fan, and I enjoy playing chess. So that's a little about me.
Good to know. Good to know. I guess it's a common denominator among Ethiopians. I hope you guys don't lose your love for soccer when you come here. I guess we've gone through the introductions fairly fast. Is there like a hobby that you guys have rather than playing sports? I guess you touched upon this now, but you said chess. Do you do this as like a hobby or have you progressed in it?
Yeah, I mean, I started off really young. I started playing when I was like 10 or 11, and I've been playing ever since. So a couple of tournaments here and there, like in quarantine, kind of chess.com and light chess kind of blew up. So chess become one of this like world phenomenon that became really popular. So that translated to like more opportunities to play online and all that. So we're doing a lot of that recently.
Sure. Very glad to hear that. You might have played me. You never know. I also am on that platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't. I don't remember. Probably.
No. I'm just joking, man. Abel, do you see the other?
I guess we can proceed for a while. I'm on one of the other panelists is having internet issues. So I guess we can proceed with some of the questions until they join.
Okay. So I guess one of the leading questions I have for you guys is, so I'm gonna make this a journey style. So we're gonna start from the beginning. So reflect back on your, let's say the first half of your high school experience, let's say the 9th grade, the 10th grade. Let's start with the academics because that's the foundation. How did that go for you? Did you take the national exam? Did you submit that kind of stuff? So take us through the journey of the first 2 years of your high school experience. So Kadus, you can lead and Nahum, you can proceed afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So when I started out in 9th grade, if I remember right, all I knew is I wanted to go to a university in the United States because that's the kind of mentality that my parents raised me in, sort of like any dreams is you, no matter how hard you work. We've all heard it before. So that's how it started out, even though I didn't actually know how I would go about it. So ninth grade, I had a vague idea of what I had to do. I had to keep my grades up. I had to do maybe a few extracurricular activities, but I didn't exactly know the specifics of it. So just to get myself started, I joined a few extracurricular activities in ninth grade, and these were the Model UN Club at Andernet and the Andernet track and field team. So these two were my main activities in ninth grade, and I pretty much didn't have anything else outside my personal hobbies that I did at home. These were my in-school activities, and I can talk about my personal hobbies at home later on. So moving on to 10th grade, um, I was still proceeding in the same way. I figured participating in my extracurriculars would give me a good chance, keep the grades up, of course, and so and so. And then quarantine hits, and there was 8 months of just sitting at home. There was online learning, so I had plenty of time to actually um, get on the internet and find out exactly what I needed to do. And I spent lots of time doing this research and identifying which colleges I'd like to apply to, and so on. And then finally, when we returned to in-person classes in grade 11 is when the next half of high school sort of kicked off. So this is basically like a brief version of my 9th and 10th grade.
Okay, glad to hear that. We'll dive into a bit of it as we proceed, but Nahum, you can go.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what you just said, especially in that in ninth grade, it was very, very vague as to like what I had to do and what I wanted to do was just pretty much the same mentality in that, get into a good university in the US. That was pretty much the only plan there and then. So again, of course, keeping the grades up and also kind of trying my hands at like very new things and like in extracurricular activities. I played volleyball, I played soccer in terms of sports. I did, what else was extracurricular? And yeah, I also did a bit of MUN in ninth grade, but not really much. I was just merely focused on keeping the grades up, kind of having that solid transition into high school, not taking many risks. But yeah, so pretty much ninth grade was like that. And 10th grade, I think I became a lot more involved in more in sports and many more extracurricular activities, which we probably will touch upon sometime later as well, I think. But yeah, academics again was again keeping the grades up. But I guess we did not do national exams because it was canceled during our time, so we did not have to do that. Again, in quarantine, though, I think that kind of shattered many of the ideas and opportunities I was planning to do in terms of extracurriculars in 10th grade, especially. But yeah, that was pretty much 9th and 10th grade. And in quarantine, it was mostly, again, kind of trying to keep up with schoolwork. But as Good just mentioned, you had a lot of time on hand. I had a really long time, so I was researching many colleges. But then again, watching a bunch of YouTube videos, kind of getting myself acclimated with the entire college application process, but more so in 11th grade than 10th, but kind of having a basic idea of what I was supposed to do was pretty much what took much of my time in 9th and 10th grade, I'd say.
Okay. Abil, I'm on it here, I believe. Am I mistaken in saying that?
I don't think so.
I thought I saw a
Hello?
name.
Oh, Haymanot is here. Yes. Okay.
See, I never miss a beat.
Hi. Well, what was the question again? I just joined.
No, maybe you can first introduce yourself briefly, then we can. I just started asking one question.
Okay. So my name is Haymanot. I recently graduated from Cathedral High School, and I've been working at ECP for the last 6 or 7 months as an SAT tutor. And I was accepted to major in astronomy and computer science, double majoring in astronomy and computer science. So yeah.
Gotcha. Second student, I've seen this. That's pretty amazing. Ethiopians are really pushing the boundaries, I guess. Haymanot, the first question, got to hear that you've been involved with ECP as well. My first question is, give us a rundown of the first 2 years of your high school experience. Basically your 9th and 10th grade. What was your mental mindset at? Where were you in terms of like thinking of applying? Was there anything you were involved in, or is there anything that sparked your interest into applying internationally? Basically, walk us through your life story in the first 2 years of your high school.
Yeah, so actually, I decided to apply to US colleges once I finished 11th grade. So I was pretty late to the whole process. So in 9th and 10th grade, I didn't really think about going to college abroad. I did want to study astronomy, but that kind of developed after junior year. So I didn't really think about going abroad in 9th and 10th grade. So I wasn't thinking about the ACT or anything. I didn't know the process then.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I would group myself in Haymanot's shoes as well. I didn't have any clue what I was gonna apply and all this stuff. I had to have like a mini crash course the end of my 11th grade and, basically run with it. And thanks to the internet, you have all these resources on your hand that you can learn fairly quickly. Doesn't mean that's the best option, but if you're there, it doesn't mean that it's impossible as well. That's what I want to highlight at the end of the day. So if there's anybody listening right now that's like, it's too late, it's actually not. And in college, I remember I was in this organic chemistry class, and this lady came in with a toddler in her hands, and that kind of reminded me that it's never too late to attend college if that's one of your career goals or your life goals at that. Abel, do you have anything to add to this first question? Where were you at kind of your first 2 years of high school?
Yeah, same thing. 9th and 10th grade, never really thought about applying it at all seriously. Not even vaguely, it was just almost a safe accepted version of learning potentially at Addis Ababa University or an area that's not too far away. That was really it. And there was not even a thought involved of what happens after 12th grade. Late 11th grade, we started hearing about all other students applying and that you need extracurriculars. So we just jammed some extracurriculars into our 11th grade summer. Not really our passion. We didn't know what we were doing. Just we knew that extracurriculars were necessary. So just jammed in a couple of volunteer works here and there. And then started, took the SAT 12th grade, and it was just a really packed year and really shortened timeline. Didn't start seriously considering college until early 12th grade. So that's one of the lessons too. I hope you guys take from this panel. Starting early is probably the best advice out there, and the advice I give everywhere that I interact with students is just start early. Potentially 10th or 9th grade is the best time to start thinking about your future.
Okay, so my next question is going to be related to, now by default, I'm going to kind of gloss over your academics because almost everybody, it's a standardized curriculum nationally. I'm not sure if maybe Nahum might have a little bit of a different experience. I can foresee that, but I would say it's for a majority of the country, everybody takes the same classes, same, yada, yada, yada. But I'm more interested in your SAT experience. How many of you have taken it? What was that journey like? And honestly, if you feel like it was too bumpy, I really want to hear more details then, because I want people to learn from it as well. And I know looking back, it's very easy for us to paint rosy pictures on everything, but I want you to reflect on the challenges you had, because many people could have the same challenges. So I'll start with you, Kudus, and we'll proceed from there.
Okay, thank you. So starting from academics in general, especially academics in school, because there are a few questions in the chat about that. I'm going to start with one obvious question that might be on everyone's minds. Is GPA important? And the answer to that is great. It could be, but also maybe not. Most colleges in the United States don't pay attention to the receive in ninth grade. You're a fresh high school student. Colleges understand that you might mess up a bit from being too carefree, and that's something that happens to any of us as humans. Some universities, such as Stanford University, don't even look at the ninth grade GPA at all, much less consider it. However, as you advance throughout high school, so we're talking about 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, you're gonna want to keep that GPA up. 11th grade especially matters the most. So you're gonna want to keep your GPA above around a 3.5. Most universities don't have a specific benchmark saying if you get below this GPA, we will reject you. Most universities don't say this. However, what I find as a good benchmark for these big institutions like the Ivy Leagues is a 3.85. Other than that, when we come to the SAT, my personal experience with the SAT, I took the SAT twice, both times in my junior year, which is 11th grade. My first time was in March of 2021. Second time was August of that same year, so in the summer after 11th grade. So my journey with the SAT is, I don't know how that experience may differ, but before I took it for the first time, I decided that I wanted to get a good score from the beginning, so I studied hard before the beginning of it, before my first time. This is not the case with most students, as most students typically in the United States take the test once to test their ability, and then study and then take it again to get a maximum possible score. I didn't want to do that, so I studied as hard as I could for the first time for maybe about 2 months. And these 2 months were very frustrating. I found myself struggling on specific kinds of questions. I couldn't get my score above a certain threshold, and I just didn't know why. But after a certain point, I identified a strategy that helped me out. And this strategy was to find out why I made a specific mistake and to practice to make sure I never made that one kind of mistake again. Slowly but surely, this would help improve anyone's score, and this helped me get a 1500 on my first try. 760 on the English section and a 740 on the math section. Although I was very much satisfied with the English section, I felt that I could do better on the math section, which was my primary motivation for taking the SAT again. So I used my summer break to study for the math section in particular very hard, and then I took the SAT again in August of 2021. This time around, I got a 1540, 740 on the English section, and a perfect 800 on the math section. Another advantage I'd like to highlight for taking the SAT twice is that most universities in the US will allow you to super score your result. Super scoring means you can select the best English score and the best math score you have and combine them, even from different test dates. So in my case, I took the 760 from my first test date for English and the 800 from my second test date for math, and combined them for a super score of 1560. Other than that, some of you may be wondering if it's even worth it to take the test, given that so many universities are test optional. And my advice to that is it 100% is worth it. For international students, everything that may appear to be optional is not really optional. If you do it, you get a significant advantage. In the case of the SAT, taking it and submitting a good score can sometimes even double your chances of acceptance, which is insane when we look at a acceptance rate of 4%, for example, for Yale.
Okay, a lot going on there. Just want to put the caveat that when you super score, Caduce is in a very good position because both of his scores are really good when super scored. If it's a very asymmetrical score, I think you should put that caveat in everybody's experience. But obviously, if like, let's just put it this way, Caduce was chilling either way. It's not like he was in a bad position with any of the scores. So there is a question of symmetry in your scores that you need to consider when super scoring, but that's a very extraneous case, and it's a case-by-case basis that everybody should consider. When in the chat, please be productive and answer each other's questions, but please don't opine on issues that you have little to no experience in. Now you may proceed. SAT experience, take us.
All right. I also took my SAT twice. First in May of my junior year, and then the second time, the same time as goodness, which is August of my senior year or junior year, I guess. It's pretty much in the summer, I guess. It was also pretty bumpy for me in that in May, I was in a lot of stress, especially because of schoolwork was pretty much piling up and kind of trying to keep up with the extracurriculars I was leading. So didn't get much time per se to study. So the first time around, I think I did what I just mentioned previously, was the whole trying to test my knowledge first and then kind of trying to do it again. So the first time around, I think I got a 1490, was it? It was a 770 English and then 720 math. So again, that was pretty much very asymmetrical with this course as well. So again, I used my summertime to pretty much really study on the math section. But yeah, in August, I was I pretty much lucked out. The English one I didn't do as well as my first time, so it was like a 720, and then but my math I did quite well on, so I got a 790 the second time around. So I guess that's pretty much it. I got 15-15 overall, which is pretty good. But I do have to mention something which I think was kind of recurring every time I attended an admissions office seminar, or whenever I kind of talk to many of my friends here in the US about the SAT, which is that after a certain threshold, it really is pretty much insignificant in that, for example, and the SAT is a measure of kind of how much you know. I mean, as long as you can prove that you know as well as much, then it really shouldn't matter. Like usually aiming for that kind of 1500, 1520 range is really good, especially as international students. But then upwards of that, it's pretty good. It really becomes insignificant improving it afterwards. Oh yeah, okay. I guess there's a question kind of follow up through for the SAT, or how did I study for the SAT pretty much. It was a pretty, I think there's a lot of online resources which you could definitely exploit quite well. So Khan Academy is a great one. I really used that really well. I think it really helped me use all the practice tests and stuff. But the major strategy, I guess I would say, was kind of being smart in the way you kind of use your practice tests, because yeah, for sure. Because you don't want to completely kind of waste them just simply doing them, given that there's kind of limited supply of them. So they're like 8 practice tests. So with each one, you want to do something productive with it. So after you take the first one, for example, then you kind of identify what you got wrong and kind of drilling in on that and making sure that you actually understand it, so that next time you find a similar question, you pretty much know what to do. So I would definitely recommend that you use those practice tests wisely, I would say. But yeah, other than practice tests, you have a lot of resources. You could pretty much search up SAT, ACT questions online, and you could find a bunch of resources. So I would say making use of the resources online is definitely integral.
Yeah. Before we go to Haimanot, I have to say this. I think you should choose 1 or 2 good resources and stick with them. I think it's very tempting to be like, there's this strategy, can I have my cake and eat it too? Choose 1 or 2 really good resources, stick by them, understand the exam. You don't have to be perfect on the SAT, but that should nonetheless be your goal. So Haimanot, do you want to go now?
Yeah, okay. So I also took the ACT twice. The first time I took it around like 3 months after, or 4 months after I discovered about the whole college application process. So after my 11th grade summer, I decided to take my first ACT in October of my senior year. So there was this free training at our school that was given by our senior that went to a US university, and he trained us on both the ACT and the college application process. So that summer I learned about the ACT and the college application process, and I decided to take my first ACT in October, and I scored a 1380 on that ACT. I actually prepared like for 3 months because of the training, and I scored a 1380. And then the second time I took it, I took the subject test before taking the normal ACT a second time. There was the last subject test, which was given in June 5 of 2021. I wanted to take the subject test, so I just took that. I took physics and maths level 2, and I scored 780 on the physics and an 800 on the maths. And then I moved on to taking the ACT a second time in August of 2021. So that time I actually studied less because I decided to take the ACT again around maybe like a month before August. So I had a small amount of time, but I did my best studying on Khan Academy. I mostly used Khan Academy and actual practice tests from the College Board, and I scored a 1480 on that try. So my English and math scores were 620 on the first time. It was a 620 on the English and a 760 on the maths. And the second time was a 680 on the English and 800 on the maths.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear. Abel, you have anything to add to your multiple SAT experiences?
Oh, no, just wanted to add this. So just wanted to let everyone know that in terms of ACT prep, it's really I guess I would say it's really valuable to like learn from someone who has that actual experience with the SAT, because it's not just the SAT is such a unique exam that there are various ways to approach it. It requires a lot of strategies and all that. So learning from an actual person that has a top score on the SAT is really valuable, because they're not going to just teach you the content, but specific strategies you can use for the exam. So yeah, just I wanted to plug ECP's ACT course at this point too. We have Kadus on the team. Kadus is one of our ACT tutors, 1560 on the ACT, and Haimanot, who just described her ACT experience, is also an ACT tutor at ECP. And Nahum, 1550 is a great score. We should definitely talk after this call. We would love to have you on the team. But yeah, our next ACT course starts on July 4. If you guys are not aware about it, be sending the link in the chat. But I just wanted to make sure everyone knows about our coming ACT course.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the SAT is its own market. So, for example, I just maybe highlighted it, but didn't go too much in depth into this. But the way students prepare in the US is at the end of their 10th grade, they took what's called the PSAT. So they're literally prepping for the SAT next year. They're never going to send their PSAT, but they're going to gauge their performance. And most students take it with the anticipation that they're going to retake it as well. So there's no one time, because the good thing is you don't have to submit scores that you don't want. So they'll never know if you took it, I don't know, however many times you want. But I will say, since it's a financial investment at the end of the day, make sure that you use each opportunity. And I would say at least give yourself 2.5 months at least. And I wanted to highlight something that might be embedded in almost everybody's successful SAT experience. They have been prepping for it their whole life. What I mean by that is when you read something like very cryptic, let's say you read a novel or something like that, or you listen to a movie which is like Game of Thrones. They're using some words that you don't know and you have to look it up on a dictionary. That is also part of your prep. So when we say start early, if you really want to make your SAT experience very easy, one of the most successful ways I've seen it is like read books. And read good books that will challenge you to think critically, because the SAT will definitely challenge you to do that. And you have to comprehend as fast as you read. And if there's a huge disconnect with how fast you comprehend, how fast you read, come to ECP and we'll help you navigate some of those issues as well. So on to our second, my third question at this point is the juggernaut, which is going to be very different for everybody. Your extracurricular activities. I know some of you have highlighted on them, but I want to understand how you chose them. Not necessarily, I mean, you can say you like it, but how do you navigate making it your own and developing some sort of skill in it? Gudus, you can proceed.
Okay, so personally, I like to classify my extracurriculars into three. The first is the extracurriculars within school. These are your typical students' clubs and organizations. You can go into depth in them, become leaders, organize lots of things. You have lots of freedom. The second is extracurriculars that are short-term and typically offered by universities. For example, summer programs, short-term research programs, maybe short-term pre-college courses. And finally, the third is extracurriculars that you do because you simply enjoy them, hobbies of your own, things that you never took to competitions, or things that you do simply because you relax them. They relax you. So in my first category, which is organizations in school, I went particularly, I participated in mainly three extracurriculars. That is the Student Council, the Robotics Club, and the Model United Nations. As I mentioned earlier, I actually started with Model UN when I was in 9th grade. I was the president of all three of these clubs, and I was actually the co-founder of the Student Council as well. And the one thing that I would like to highlight when it comes to extracurriculars like this is two things. Depth matters much more than breadth. What I mean to say by that is how deeply you go into one club is going to matter much more significantly than how many clubs you participate in. For example, if you were to compare two students, one of which was a member of 15 different clubs, and one was the president of two clubs, having accomplished lots within those two, universities are much more likely to go for the second one, because this shows that this student has an expertise in this area. Universities, students might often have the misconception that universities are looking for all-rounded students, but that's not the case. They're looking to build an all-rounded incoming class. This means that they want students that have an expertise in many different areas, so they have a diverse incoming class. However, when it comes to the individual student themselves, they would like the student to be much more experts in a specific topic. Another thing I'd like to highlight is your accomplishments within each club. Now, you can become the leader of certain clubs or extracurriculars, but just being a leader and then doing nothing with it is pointless. You will need to have accomplished a lot within those clubs for it to stand out from your competitors. Moving on to the second class of extracurriculars, which is the kinds provided by colleges like summer programs. There are a lot of these that are offered by many different universities, Columbia, Johns Hopkins, Yale, but usually they can be on the more expensive side, and most summer programs don't provide financial aid. With the exception of YYGS and YYAS, I'm only speaking from my experience. I haven't done much research into summer programs. I had applied to YYAS, but I was not accepted. But I applied to YYGS in my junior year, and I was accepted with a substantial amount of financial aid, so I was able to attend last year. Nahum also mentioned in the chat that he attended as well. YYGS was a very immersive experience, and not only did it introduce me to the
yes. Not to be rude, but can you say the full form of YYGS if somebody wants to Google it?
I'm terribly sorry. YYGS stands for Yale Young Global Scholars. YYAS stands for Yale Young African Scholars. So the African Scholars one is only for students from Africa, whereas the Global Scholars one is available to students from around the world. YYAS is also free if that is more doable for certain students. And YYGS has the option for financial aid. So as I was saying, YYGS was a really immersive experience, and it introduced me to the academics that I would be experiencing at Yale. I was able to connect with a lot of students from around the world, and I was able to even connect with current Yale students and Yale professors, which had a huge impact in shaping the university that I would choose to attend, which became Yale, mainly because of YYGS. Additionally, you would most likely gain a mentor by participating in YYGS. I was lucky enough to meet a very kind student at Yale that offered to help me edit my essays, my Common App essay, and this student really helped me when it comes to writing college application essays, which I'll talk more about later. I'm sorry to be talking a lot, but the final category of extracurriculars is the personal hobbies. Now, these hobbies are something you would want to write essays about. I would generally advise to keep these hobbies to yourself and not go into competitions with them. But if you're really that passionate, you could do that. However, these hobbies should be something you just enjoy. In the activities list of the Common App, you could list all your achievements you've done at school. For example, I would have listed my robotics and MUN achievements. But when it came to my personal hobbies, I wrote about those in my essays and why I enjoyed them so much. So some of them include cooking. I also enjoy exercising, and I really love science fiction movies. Other than that, I think that's all. Some of you might have questions regarding competitions and awards, and it's really black and white when it comes to that. Win as many awards as you can, participate in as many competitions as you can. Awards carry much more weight when they're on the national level, or even if you have the opportunity, the international level. Thank you.
Okay, now are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry I turned off my camera, but I just didn't want the bandwidth to be pretty bad.
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I understand. Go for it.
All right, so I think it's very different for me in that I was actually very fortunate enough to be a scholarship student here at ICS, meaning I got in there when I was in 8th grade. So I was one of the 4 scholarship students that got into ICS. So I definitely had a lot more opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities. But then again, that translates to, because of the school profile, colleges know that I had all these opportunities, and it would look pretty bad on my applications if I did not make the most use out of them, right? So I definitely was a bit more involved. So I had a plethora of interests. So again, sports were definitely a big part of it, meaning I played varsity soccer and I also played varsity volleyball. Went to international competitions actually. So I went to Tanzania and Zambia twice. I was in STEM, and we had ICS STEM, so I was doing robotics, math, and science competitions. I actually started a chess club at school, so that was one of my big hobbies, and actually one I definitely wanted to do in school, not merely for college, but because I really like chess, I really like hosting tournaments, I really like teaching it, so I wanted to kind of turn that hobby into something more worthwhile. So I decided to kind of formulate a chess club. We hosted tournaments in Addis and all of that, so that was really nice. I also was a theater kid though. Uh, that's a bit peculiar, I know, but like I actually genuinely enjoyed participating in like productions in our school. So I did Hamlet and Macbeth in Amharic and a couple of shows in English. So yeah, those were like the major extracurriculars. I think those were the ones I listed in my Common App. But I also did other stuff in like start of 11th grade and end of 10th grade that did not amount to much. So I didn't really mention them on my Common App. Oh yeah,
Gotcha.
wait, hold up. I do want to kind of add on kind of what Curtis said about summer programs, which I think is really important. I was lucky enough to actually get into YYJS with Curtis, I think, yes, was on the same batch. but I definitely think it kind of matters more if you are thinking of applying to that very same college, meaning if you wanted to apply to Columbia, it would be pretty helpful if you did a Columbia summer program because you kind of have more stuff to talk about in your essays and that you can kind of weave in that summer experience and how you kind of did something with it or learned something from it and how you kind of liked that into like some substantial essays. So I definitely would recommend, I mean, if you can get your hands on any extracurricular activities, which do tend to be pricey, but some of them offer great financial aids, especially like YOGS, especially for me, that was really substantial. I think I was one of the main reasons I was able to attend as well. So yeah, I would say summer programs, if you can find one that from the college you want to apply to, and if it's one that you can afford, I would definitely say go for it because, well, you also learn a lot from it, not just from college, but will be something very interesting. It'll give you more perspective into um, well, I don't know, different ideas, or different philosophies, different whatever the cup might be. But even more so, I think you'd kind of foster these connections with equally ambitious students from all over the world. And I think kind of helping each other out in the college application process would also be something you might garner from that. So yeah, I think that's what I'd say. Thank you.
Gotcha. One of the very rare Ethiopians who I've heard Macbeth, especially in theater from. Hi, Manut. You want to proceed?
So I also had like three categories of extracurricular activities. So I was into like organizing events in my school. I was a co-founder of a career club. So we used to invite guest speakers to come and talk experience, especially from like different professions, unusual professions. They'll come to our school, we would invite them to our school and they would just give us speeches about their work. And so I was kind of also involved in GDG, which is the Google Developers Group at this the community in Addis Ababa. So I was also a volunteer there. I used to organize events.
Hi, Manut.
The other one was I like tutoring. So I was a tutor in my school and also in summers. I used to go around and tutor at charity organizations. And I also tutor here in ECP. So tutoring was my other category. And the third category was physics and astronomy. So I was involved in my school's physics and astronomy club. Can you not hear me?
It's very fuzzy.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's very fuzzy, Hi, Manut.
Okay, I'm sorry, is it better now?
It's getting better. Can you repeat the Google developer program that you said and how you were involved in that?
Yes, I was also involved as an event organizer. So, the event organizing was just at my school as the co-founder of Career Club and as a volunteer at GDG, which is Google Developers Group Addis. And the other category was the tutoring. I used to tutor in summer. I used to tutor in summers in charity organizations, and I also tutor at school. So that was my other category. And the other one is the physics and astronomy. So I was into physics and astronomy since I was a freshman in high school. So I was really involved in the physics and astronomy club at school. And I also was involved in the Ethiopian Space Science Society. I used to go to summer seminars there, and I also did an internship with them last summer. So those were my extracurricular activities. There are basically three categories.
Okay, glad to hear that. I will briefly share mine. I came to the US in 11th grade. And I guess a bulk of my opportunities and what I wanted to do came after I arrived here. I would say that I was very mathematically inclined, and I did math clubs here. And like Gadu said, if it's national or like state level, it will get a lot of merit. So, and I did that as well. I did a bunch of finance competitions after I came to here. In Ethiopia, I did very remedial stuff. I would say, I think most people discount their involvement in the church or the mosque they attend. And if you regularly do something in this religious institutions that you're part of, I would say that should be a part of your application as well, that because that's a part of you. Other than that, I would say most of it is covered. I highly recommend being innovative and taking initiative in creating clubs. I really like the career club that Haimanot mentioned because everybody can start that at their school. If it's not there, of course, but don't start things just for the sake of starting them, because if you're going to start them, they might as well do something. Abel, what was your extracurriculars like? Give us a highlight.
Yeah, so like I said, started late, did not have a lot of information. That's actually one of the reasons we started ECP, right? Back when we were applying back in I was 12th grade in 2017. And during that time, it was such a struggle to get information. It was secondhand information through friends and people who were going through the process, or close family members who don't really have that insight as people who have actual college application experience. So it was really an uninformed journey, but what I did was just a couple of volunteer work at MHO, Massage Humanitarian Organization at Dumba. It was located at Dumba back then. And then volunteer work at YWCA. We were teaching students, gathering material, organizing events, and a bunch of other stuff, basically working to help underprivileged kids. And that was really it. But in terms of extracurriculars, what I want to add is from a lot of the students I've seen that have gotten acceptance into these top schools, initiative is really key. And I like the idea that Galus mentioned. Depth is way more important than width, right? Keep on the path of the extracurricular you like. You can do a bunch of other extracurriculars. More is always good. As long as it's just not all over the place. But depth and going really deep into that particular extracurricular you like and showing high levels of initiative, right? Creating clubs, organizing events like nobody has done before in your school, really puts you a step ahead in terms of college applications. A lot of the students that I've seen that have gotten acceptances, even Hamamoto mentioned and Carlos also did, they've started clubs in their or in their high school. So starting clubs is a really key thing, and taking any form of initiative and showing leadership, I would say, is really valuable.
Okay. Just going forward, I saw that Joey has been providing a lot of advice. As I cannot verify anything you're saying, Joey, and I don't know you, I would say kind of like taper it down or give us a rundown of who you are so that we can vet and be like the people can take advice from this person. Because the last thing we want to do is give people the wrong advice. And I don't have time to monitor the chat. So I'd rather not disclose. So then please don't provide any advice then. Perfect. That would be, if you don't want to disclose your identity, you can do that as well. Have a great day. Okay, so continuing on the time we're having right now, I would want to discuss the next step, which is which I would say is the one that most Ethiopians struggle with, the essays. And I've been editing essays for quite a long time now. Like I said, I've graduated and I'm working right now, and I will say that this is the part that we need to talk a little bit more in depth about. I would say, how do you guys approach writing essays? And I'm sure you had to reiterate and write prompts. And like, can you give us, read the prompts and choose one? Can you give us a brief story of how you went about writing your essay? How did you choose people who edited the essay? And also, did you submit how many secondary when you secondaries are for medical school? My bad, guys. Supplemental essays are for bachelor degree colleges. When you wrote those supplementals, did you reuse any of them, or did you write unique essays each time? Give us a brief rundown of how you went about that, especially because when you apply for Ivy Leagues, I know they ask you for a lot of supplemental questions. So could just give us a brief history.
Okay, thank you. So starting off with the main essay that everyone is going to have to write, the Common App personal statement. So for this essay, and pretty much all my essays in general, the approach I took was I would come up, brainstorm with one specific topic. It could be about a hobby of mine. It could be maybe about a life challenge. It could be about academics. And I would simply just keep writing essays and keep changing topics. I would write different drafts for different topics, and then throughout the entire process, I would see which topic worked best for me and fits with the prompt. Now, this process was very, very challenging because I would often find myself sitting and writing for maybe 3 hours a day, 2 hours a day. And this took place at around the beginning of my 12th grade year in high school. At the end of it all, I wrote about maybe 40 different drafts for my Common App personal statement before settling on the final one. I decided on the final one after I chose the topic that I really liked. But even after this, I had certain individuals edit my essay. So the advice I would give when it comes to this is try to have people that know you really well read the essay, because the kind of feedback you want to get needs to be specific. For example, the people you have read your essay, for example, your close friends, should be able to read it and instantly know you wrote this and no one other than you could have ever written it. The essay needs to be able to scream, this is 100% who I am, and it is my authentic identity. So when it comes to this, maybe have really close trusted friends read your essay. It could be useful to have mentors read your essay. Like I mentioned earlier, a mentor I gained from YYGS helped me edit my essay extensively. This student was particularly experienced because obviously they were already at Yale, so they knew what it would take to have a good Common App essay. So that advice was really valuable. So generally, the general advice is to just keep writing, keep trying, because essay writing is a skill that develops over time. When I read the essay I decided on and compared it with an essay I wrote even just a week earlier, the difference was drastic. When it comes to supplementals, like Elias mentioned, different colleges have different supplementals, particularly the Ivy League colleges require you to write lots of them. Yale in itself has 8 supplemental essays, though 4 of them are not necessarily called essays, and I'll explain why in just a bit. So the first 4 are typical essays. So you have a word limit of around 100 words or 250 words. I'm going to focus on 2 main essays that might be giving students some trouble. That is the Why Yale essay and the other 4 essays that I mentioned earlier that might not be classified as traditional essays. So starting from the Why Yale essay, it's already challenging because you are limited to 125 words. That is incredibly difficult, and I found myself really, really struggling to get my word count even below 150, let alone 125. The strategy you need to adopt for these essays is you need to do lots of research on the university. don't go on the website and simply list down basic things that anyone can easily find. For example, don't say, I want to go to Yale because of its 2-to-1 student to faculty ratio, or because of its stellar academic options. These are basic things that I guarantee you 10,000 other students are going to write. You want to be really specific. So what I did was I did in-depth research at Yale, about the facilities, and I went the extra step to go and look at the current professors at Yale. Then I went to my intended major, which was astrophysics, and I looked for professors in this field. Then I selected one professor whose work really appealed to me. Then when I went back to my essay, I described my interest in astrophysics. Then I connected that to how Yale would be a great fit to help me explore my interests. Then I mentioned this professor and their work and how I would love to work with them under this topic. This is the ticket to helping you unlock the why this university essay. It's the strategy you need to use for pretty much any university, and it's a guaranteed success every time. The second half, coming to the other 4 essays that I mentioned earlier. Now, these 4 essays are really unique to Yale because Yale calls them the short answer essays. You're limited to around 35 words or 200 characters, including spaces. So you cannot give anything more than 2 sentences for an answer to your essay. And for these essays, I decided to get really creative. And that's what I would advise to most students to do as well. For example, 2 of the essay prompts are what inspires you and what course would you like to teach if you were a Yale professor? For example, if you would say, I'm inspired by Larry Page because he's the creator of Google and he's a computer science genius. And on the second question, if you say, I would like to teach computer science at Yale, this is a pretty obvious answer. It doesn't show dimension to your personality. Think of eating bananas for dinner every day for a week. It just seems dull and boring. So you'd want to get creative. For example, in my what would you like to teach at Yale essay, what I wrote for that was, I went on Yale's website, I took a look at the courses, and once I knew exactly all the courses that were there, I came up with a course that wasn't offered. And I even got creative beyond that point, and I said I would like to teach a course called Science Nonfiction, where students are able to explore all the realms of science fiction, like Star Wars, and see if these technologies.
Can just give me a second. Let me mute this person real quick.
Yeah, guys, if you could all please mute yourself, so that we don't waste time.
Yeah, could just proceed. Sorry about that.
Okay. Another thing, yeah, as I was saying, just stay creative, have non-traditional answers, but be careful not to go too crazy and be too dramatic with your answer choices. For example, for the what inspires you topic, off the top of my head, you could a student could answer, I'm inspired by ants because despite their small size, they're able to carry 100 times their own body weight, and they are able to form complex social structures. So yeah, just be creative, and no matter what, keep writing, draft after draft after draft. Perseverance is really key rather than talent when it comes to essay writing.
To add to that, just like the SAT, when you do a question and when you get it wrong, and you want to know what you got wrong, you gotta, I know writing is a little bit more subjective, but you want somebody to critique your writing and tell you ways that you can improve it. And you want to take constructive criticism seriously and give it with the necessary gravity requires. I also want to plug in now, we also edit essays. I'm actually one of the main editors of many of the essays that people write. I've edited tons of essays, not only, undergrad essays, but I also edit graduate school essays in the US. So, so I've seen many writing styles, and I've also written published stuff in the US. So feel free to send us your essays. You can get the pricing and everything on our website. But let's go to Nahum.
Alrighty. I think you just mentioned a lot of this stuff because I think he really gave you some really good insights. So kudos to you, Chris, for that. That was really good. But yeah, other than that, I would like to kind of add, I mean, the fact that you to be even able to write these many drafts, to be able to kind of persevere through and all of that, I think what really matters is really starting early. You really don't want to cram your essays. You absolutely do not want to write your essays last minute because they wouldn't be your best work. They wouldn't be a reflection of your true personality, if you will. So yeah, I would definitely recommend starting early. The Common App prompts come in January. So I started mine like June, July-ish. So I had kind of a lot of time to edit my essays. But at the same time, I would like to kind of mention that I applied to Yale early, meaning restrictive early action, which is a bit of a bargain, but I kind of poured everything I had into those essays. So yeah, as far as recycling goes, I didn't do much of that because I didn't apply to as many schools after Yale. But yeah, I would definitely say I think what you just mentioned is um, being creative with it is really important because I think you have to consider it from the perspective of an admissions officer as well. An admissions officer they receive like 40,000 applications, something a year, and they go through these like, I don't know, hundreds at a time. So, and they probably read the same exact stuff every single time. And you want to be that person that kind of sticks out. You want to have their attention for a second. Um, and, and it's definitely going to be very useful to kind of get into that mentality as to say, what exactly do you want to do and what exactly do you want to portray and giving yourself enough time to do it. And I think one of the great things about approaching an essay is I think I had a similar theme throughout all of my essays in that my Common App really focused on culture and cultural duality and how I kind of navigate that sphere. Um, and yeah, I think I really tried to get creative with some of the essays as well in terms of like what course would you teach, and I'm like I talked about like music and history and how you could combine those things. Again, I really did my research in terms of I think it just made a really great point, which is that in order to write an essay that is specific to a college, you need to know exactly that college because your response to why Yale, for example, cannot simply be because it's a liberal arts school with a small liberal arts school. Like there are thousands of schools that are exactly like that. So that doesn't really answer the question. Like, and you can't just say it has a small teacher to class ratio. Like, a lot of schools have that as well. So like, why Yale exactly? So you're not really answering that question with those kind of generic responses. So what you want to do is kind of really do your research. For example, for me, I was really interested in agriculture and not necessarily agriculture, but like figuring out new ways to kind of plant seeds, kind of being innovative with our current agricultural sphere. So I worked with a lot of like farmers and stuff to kind of develop ways that made watering that reduced watering time, that reduced watering spears, and kind of helped farmers through drought and stuff. So that was kind of the main sustainability and kind of ecology and agriculture was like one of the main things I did in high school. So I made sure to kind of highlight that in some of my essays. For example, I made sure to kind of mention it in my Common App, but also mentioned it in like my why Yale essays, which is, well, I kind of talked about why I had this instructor like YYGS who talked about energy efficiency and how I learned a lot from that and how I kind of utilized that information I had from him to help me in some of my agricultural endeavors. So I kind of having that connecting theme, helping yourself kind of make connections within your essay to kind of show the admissions officer who you really are would be very, very important. And another advice I'd give is I think some people do interviews in regards to it's pretty much an extended essay, if you will. The interview is just more essay questions. So again, I asked the same why Yale question. So you really have to be prepared in that, meaning it's pretty much another essay in its own regard. So you want to make sure you really research your stuff. For example, for me, I talked about David Gellinter, who I really watched on YouTube in my free time, and he's a computer scientist, but also like comments on evolutionary biology and all of that. And I talked about how that is a testament to the liberal arts education and all of that. So making those connections that are really specific to the school you're applying to would be really, really helpful. And that's why I'm not really partial to recycling essays, because that kind of loses that personal cadence. I definitely see the utility and definitely its practicality, but making sure that you're incorporating elements of the college that are really specific will be really important, I would say. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Larry Page went to University of Michigan, my alma mater. So thanks, Gedus, for mentioning him. Hi, Manut. Do you want to proceed?
Yeah, so my Common App essay actually took like a lot of time. I worked on it right after I finished the ACT in August 28th. I started working on it. I actually already had the idea on which I was going to write the Common App essay about. So I started writing it, developing it, writing drafts, beginning August 28th until the deadline. So I didn't really have many people to read my essays. I didn't feel comfortable giving it to my friends or teachers. So I only had 2 people from my school who are already abroad learning university. So I gave my essays to them, and they edited it for me. So I wrote around 20 drafts maybe for my the main Common App essay. And the supplements also took kind of maybe like 2 or 3 months to write those essays. So yeah. So the advice I would give actually is to like make somebody read your essay. Don't just submit your essays directly. Even if you feel uncomfortable making people read about your essays, give it to someone like far away from you who doesn't know you personally. Just give it to somebody and maybe like get feedback on your essays instead of just submitting it. And start early. That's the advice I would give, because writing essays in a rush is a really bad idea. I've tried it before and it doesn't end well. So write as early as possible and write many drafts as possible.
I 100% agree with that advice. I would say that your writing should begin as soon as your SAT journey ends, and hopefully your SAT journey ends in August. So you should, and the prompts usually don't change, I would say. But I will say one thing that I see that's recurring in essays that are extremely disappointing is the disconnect that I see between the Ethiopian culture and what they want to talk about. So sometimes students don't get to reflect on their most unique part in terms of the admissions officer. So reviewing their essay, what I mean by that is the admissions officer knows Ethiopia, but may not know about Ethiopia as much as you think they do. So I want to challenge you to think, how would you portray your experience about living in that country to a person who's never been there? That should be one of, you should never gloss over that experience. And it might seem subconscious to you. So you're like, how do I reflect on this? But I want to challenge everybody to speak. Even you may weave it in, it might not be the gigantic part of your essay, but it should be a part of like your essay, I would say. It's essential in that it shows them that you are reflecting on your experience and what you've gone through. So what I mean to say by this is somebody talked about the COVID pandemic and talked about its global reach and stuff like that, said very little about how COVID affected the country. And that was such a disappointing essay to read, because I was trying to read what the person experienced about COVID in their own country. And as an international student, you should think of yourself as an ambassador of sorts to the country you're applying from. And you want to describe a little bit about the culture. Like I said earlier, this shouldn't, if you don't want it to be, it shouldn't be like a gigantic part of your essay, but you should bring some color of where you're from in your essays. I think it shows that you're kind of clueless if you gloss over this fact, and are like, it shows that you might be a bit spoiled if you don't. If you think everybody doesn't, if you think everybody, let me just say this: one of the foremost experiences about it being an Ethiopian is you see a beggar on the side. For better or for worse, that's a part of that country. And I'm just saying that you should not necessarily say this out of the blue, but things like this that may not exist in other countries, how do you experience them? And even more importantly, how have they shaped you, should be a part of your essay. And this takes deep reflection. And I would challenge you to do that in your essays. Can you ask the next question? I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, give me 1 second, guys, as I pull up the questions. Okay, but before we move on to the next question, though, wanted to clarify a couple of points on this essay thing. First of all, something Naho mentioned, he particularly said that admissions officers read about 40,000 applications per year, maybe even more than that. These Ivy League schools get a lot of applications every year. That's why acceptances are really low, right? And I want to challenge you guys to do this. Really take at least maybe one day and try to read 100 to maybe 300 essays in that particular time. You are going to see how your interest really declines as you go on to essay number 102, essay number 103. That is the predicament these admissions officers face. So if you do not grab their attention and show them yourself truly and write a really compelling essay, then they're just going to gloss over your application, right? In some ways, it's a really boring job, almost, being an admissions officers, because they're just facing a lot of essays after essays after essays after essays, right? And I really want to challenge you guys to do that and see for yourself how after a while it can get really numbing, and then the next essay you're going to read is it's not going to grab you so much unless there's something really unique about it. So that's a practice you can use to really push yourself to try to make your essay stand out. And a point on Kudus mentioned, I actually have a question for you, Kudus. You said you learned about this professor from the Yale website, and I want to take a clarification. Did you directly contact the professor, or just learned about the professor and then wrote about it in your supplementals?
I did not contact the professor. I just learned about her through the website. Everything is available on the internet these days, guys. Do not underestimate it. It may or may not be a good idea to contact professors. In my opinion, I mean, professors are really busy people. Your email might even be just forwarded to their spam, and they may never see it. So don't put too much hopes on contacting professors. If you are lucky enough to gain a contact of a student at Yale through a program like YYGS, that is definitely helpful. But as far as contacting professors goes, don't really hold out too much hope on that. And just to elaborate more on what Abil mentioned about starting your essays with something that can grab attention, this is absolutely vital. I cannot stress this enough. Admissions officers at Ivy League institutions get about 10 minutes to spend on your application. Imagine that, 10 minutes to read your grades, essays, extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, everything. Out of this, you may get 3 minutes on just your essay if you're lucky. So you really need to start that essay with something that grabs attention. But in trying to do so, don't start the essay with something that's too dramatic or that is way too extra. admissions officers see this as tacky and as a cliche and try to, it's a really difficult line to find in between the two, but if you do, the payoff is really, really high. Try to start with a dialogue that would confuse the admissions officer and make them want to know more, or try to start with a statement that is weird. For example, if you start with an essay with something like "I like taking out the trash," they're gonna wonder what kind of student likes doing chores, and they're gonna be intrigued to know more. So yeah, that's basically what I have to say about this hook.
Yeah, I think to emphasize the point that like having a hook is extremely important. I think most students I think they have a grandiose idea about their application. Your application is not as important to you, to the admissions officers as it is to you. Let's just put it that way. And I've been involved in looking over the admissions office, an admission cycle basically, and I was able to review more than 200. So what they do is they silo. They have a bunch of teams that take on a bunch of these applications. And at my institution, I was able to see a bunch of these applications. And I had a friend who basically, for one of the schools that you're applying to, for example, if you're applying to liberal arts schools, they do kind of their own admissions. If you're applying to like engineering, they do kind of their own admissions. After you sift through the general admissions. So not to get too much into this, but the point I'm trying to make is they have very limited time to go over your application. And if it seems boring the first time, nobody will ever give you a chance. So what they'll do is they'll read it the first time, and if they think it's compelling, they'll go to the greater team and are like, okay, let's give this person a chance. And the entire team has to a majority of the team has to agree that they should accept you. So be very careful in the mindset that they will go the extra step to understand your application. That's your job. And if you don't do that job well, the consequences will be grim. Okay. I saw a good question. When to join ECP? As soon as you can. As soon as you can, contact us. Tell us your story, where you're at. We'll definitely help you get there. And we'll work with your goals. I should say that. Doesn't mean everybody wants to go to Ivy League. Doesn't mean everybody should go to an Ivy League. But if that's your goal, we'll help you get there. If that's not your goal, we'll work with your goal. So I feel like there's a home for everybody in our institution. Okay, Abel, do you have another question in mind, or should I proceed with mine?
No, we were just adding more on the essay topic, so you can proceed with the next question.
Okay, so now I'm gonna ask you kind of, I would say this question is a free-for-all. I'm not gonna go sequentially because I'm not sure everybody has an answer, but Naum said you applied early, but how did you go about making college lists? Where to apply? What were the key things you looked at in applying to colleges? And you can be as blunt as possible. You can be like, the prestige was nice, but I want to understand your mental model of choosing schools. So could just go for it.
Okay, so basically there were two to three main factors that determined the colleges I wanted to apply to. Number one was, I'm not ranking these in any specific order, I'm just listing them out for you. So the first factor is academics. Did they offer the major that I wanted? Were they a science-based university? That's what I wanted to study. How flexible are their classes? Do they let me explore? How soon do I have to declare my major, et cetera, et cetera. And the second factor is finance. I'm sure many students are able to understand the need for financial aid for international students. And this is one of the main factors that most students want to attend Ivy League institutions, Stanford, MIT, University of Chicago, and things like that. These universities offer lots and lots of financial aid for students. They're incredibly rich universities, and the main difficulty is getting accepted into them. But once you're accepted, they will do almost anything for you to go there, even if that means providing you with as much financial assistance as you need. These were the two factors. And then finally, the third factor, this is a factor I didn't really dive into that much. But some of you might consider how happy you'd be in the community of a certain university. There's no one size fits all when it comes to universities. Certain students might be happy in Ivy League universities, some might not be. I hear it gets quite competitive. You also hear that it can get very supportive. The support system is really nice. You might prefer to go to a really large university like Penn State, which has over 100,000 students. Or maybe some students going there might feel like they are just lost in a sea and would prefer to go to a much smaller college like Yale that has only 5,000 students. This is all up to personal preference, and it all depends on who you are and what you're looking for in your future. Definitely don't choose an Ivy League university because it's prestigious or because everyone expects it of you. You can find success anywhere depending on your grit, your determination, and your personality. Go to the place that genuinely makes you happy and fits your definition of success.
Okay, now I'm gonna come back to you last. Maybe Haymanot, you can go.
The college search process was financial aid. That was the most important thing, I think, and also the score, like my chances of being admitted. So financial aid was good at Yale, but the main challenge, as he said, was getting accepted. So what I did when I chose my colleges was I took 3 categories of colleges, like reach schools, match schools, and what was the other one, like easier schools to get into. So
Safety.
I kind of chose 3 types of different colleges. Safety schools, yeah. So I chose those 3 categories, and Yale was in the reach category, and I also chose some in the match category. And like the mistake I made, I think the mistake I made in my past college application process was I only applied to match schools. So even though I was able to get accepted into them, but I didn't get enough financial aid. So the thing I saw was these more prestigious schools kind of have more financial aid. If you get accepted, they give you enough financial aid. And I applied to none of those schools because my first ACT score it didn't really put me in the range of their ACT range. So I think that was one mistake I made in the past, but I think it's good to apply to all different types of colleges, to safety, match schools, and reach schools. So that's the advice I would give when building your college list.
Okay. Now you can go now.
Right. Okay. So for me, I took the classic reach, match, safety kind of approach with it as well. But then again, I had to be really conscious of it because I guess again, financial aid was also really important for me as well. Meaning because many of these schools have tuition fees that are insane, like usually upwards of 50K a year, which is pretty expensive. So I did choose them in terms of I chose Yale restrictive because of many factors, but primarily because I got to do YYGS as well. So I thought I had a fairer shot, given that restrictive early action admission rates are significantly higher than regular decision. The reasons for that might be very complicated, but I took that statistic at face value and said, okay, maybe I have a fair shot at this. I mean, my scores are within the range of what they really want. My extracurriculars are not too horrible. My essays, I thought I could really tailor towards Yale, given that I did YOGS, and I've also been researching them a lot throughout the summer. I also knew that they were need blind, meaning your financial situation is not really a factor in terms of getting admissions into college. So I thought that was also a fairer shot, meaning my financial situation wouldn't necessarily affect me. So yeah, that's how I chose Yale primarily. But I also had like a bunch of schools lined up even after that. Many of them, many other reach schools as well, but also quite a number of safety and match schools. But when I chose those match schools, I also had to be kind of conscious of it because I couldn't necessarily go ahead and choose, I don't know, like UC Berkeley or something. That, I mean, that's not really a match school, but I don't know. Think of another match school, Lafayette or something like that. I had to be conscious of that because I needed schools, or I had to apply to schools which had good financial aid, or which would give me a financial aid. So like, for example, University of Washington and Lee. So that was also really, they had a Johnson Scholar program, which I thought was really good for, I thought I was competitive for it. So I thought I was gonna apply there if I did not get into Yale. So again, I had to kind of dig up a lot more than say people in the US for those kind of scholarships and stuff, because I had to be financially aware in terms of making those applications. And the good thing about all of these colleges, especially colleges with prestige, I think Chris mentioned, and also Haimana touched on it quite a lot, is that they have a really big endowment, meaning they can afford to give financially to students from all over the world. So definitely making use of that is really important, but setting your eyes on and kind of gauging your chances at some of these schools. Again, like Ivy League is not necessarily for everyone. And there are plenty of schools which give financial aid and are match per se. So kind of figuring out those schools and engaging with the rigorous research, I think is really important, and determining what colleges you want to apply to. So that's what I have to say.
Gotcha. Good rundown. Things to add. First of all, this has been mentioned. The richer the school is, the better financial aid you'll get. That's just bottom line. It is what it is. There's no way around that. It doesn't mean you'll get the financial aid, but you have a better chance of getting the financial aid. So if you're thinking like, I have 15 slots, where should I apply? You should first check reality. Where are you? And people, institutions like our programs like ECP can help you understand where to apply based on your statistics, because many people want to discount this, but it is a part of your application. And to be honest with you, it is the first thing people will look at, because it will tell them a lot about you. Don't think those three numbers, your GPA, don't tell them a lot. It tells them about your discipline. It tells them about, can you follow instructions? Are you a good follower? Because at the end of the day, college is a more rigorous extension of your high school. So make sure that you understand statistically where you're at. But after that, somebody has said this already, it's a threshold game. After a certain point, it doesn't really matter. That's when choosing your colleges becomes extremely important. And then you want to be very methodical about it. And applying to need blind schools gives you the best option at getting a full scholarship. I'm not talking about like 75%, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about like people, because majority of Ethiopians cannot even pay $10,000. The GDP of the country is not even 5,000. So try to understand that need blind schools are your best option at attaining full scholarship. And this can be Ivy League institutions. This can be like liberal arts institutions like Williams College, Amherst College, Pomona College. So there are a variety of these schools. Make sure to do your own research when applying to them. And they'll kind of ask you what the Yale's undergraduate liberal arts, or like my school, it was called College of Literature, Science and Arts. So it's kind of like every school has its own name for it, but they'll ask you similar questions. Make sure to prepare for them. Because financial aid is one of the most recurring questions we get, and you have to set yourself up in the best position before heading into that game. Because once you're accepted to these schools, like I just said, they'll do anything for you. Yeah, for international students, I would say the least the least of all, which people know, is Amherst. Amherst has insanely good financial aid. And I mean, my God, I know a couple of people who went there and they have not worried about their finances at all. And right now they work at big institutions. So that's a school that I want to bring to everybody's radar, because everybody knows the Harvard, the Yales, the MITs. But let's be honest, good news. If you got into Stanford, they'll give you the financial aid that you need. They will most probably do. They just don't have it as a policy. That's the difference between these schools.
That's that the other big schools that don't have the need blind policy will give you aid. However, it makes it harder to get accepted, because being need aware means that if you need financial aid, they will look at your application more negatively. Stanford is most famous for this. Their acceptance rate for international students, because of their need awareness, is around 0.5%. And that's the most insane number I've ever seen when it comes to university admission. Of course, if you get in, you'll never have to worry about the aid, but the fact that they're need aware makes it especially more difficult to get in.
Yeah, to add to this point, I think the number is not necessarily reflective that they hate international students. It's just that their school is very tech focused. And if you lack in that aspect, and I don't mean just know a couple of coding skills, I mean be the leader in whatever kind of tech area that you want to be in, they will probably reject you. And
yeah, that's absolutely.
And but I would say I want to bring kind of 5 schools that most people don't know about: Harvey Mudd, Pomona College, Claremont McKenna, that consortium of schools in California. I applied to them: Pomona, Claremont McKenna, Harvey Mudd. These are for people who are STEM focused, but the good thing is within this course consortium, if you get accepted to one, you can take classes at all these schools. So that's Claremont McKenna is another one, and there's 5 of them. I just Caduce is putting them in the chat. Harvey Mudd is one of them. Pomona, Claremont McKenna. But I would say Pomona is the best in terms of like quote unquote prestige, but all of them give pretty good aid if you get accepted. But these are really good schools to have in your radar. Another good schools is like the New York schools. They're insanely generous, especially even at that state level. It's I would say they're very generous. Yeah, McKenna has 2 ends, but I don't think it's a problem. Google will fix it. Don't worry about it, goodness. Don't worry. Once a person Googles it, they'll know. So those are the kind of schools. If there's any kind of other schools that I'm missing.
Lafayette, maybe? I don't know. Colby, I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean, in the East Coast, the liberal arts colleges are like too many to count. But I would say Amherst's counterpart is Williams, Franklin and Marshall. My older brother went to Franklin and Marshall, and he got full financial aid. So that's also a school that you might want to consider. But yeah, Abel, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to really add, but I have a question that's probably on a lot of students' conscious or unconscious minds, which is full scholarships, right? So we have Kadus, Aymanut, Nahu, and Elias as well, who have received full scholarship. I personally did not receive a full scholarship. So I guess I wanted to ask you guys, kind of diverging a bit, but we'll get back on track. What does full scholarship really entail? Because I feel like knowing this would provide the inspiration to students and really give them a picture of what to expect with in terms of full scholarships at top institutions in the US. So what does it entail?
Sure. I can go first because I guess I'm the earliest to apply out of this group. I would say that full scholarship, in my opinion, is everything that covers your tuition and your expenses. When I say expenses, I mean dorms, meals, school supplies, and at times they should, in my case, they gave me pocket money to stay afloat. So that was my experience. I will say that I didn't want to go too far. So, and I didn't want to apply to U Chicago because it was, but the two schools that were in my vicinity that were really good were Northwestern and University of Michigan. My parents live in Chicago. So when it comes to full scholarship, it one thing is you straight up receive a scholarship, full scholarship, because you got into Harvard and they know that you need a full scholarship and they just give it to you. The other way that most people don't know about is you can negotiate your way into full scholarships. So for example, let's say you get into two schools. Let's say you get into, I don't know, just choose a school, University of Chicago and Northwestern. And Northwestern gives you a 50% scholarship and U Chicago gives you a 60% scholarship. Because these two schools are on par for the most part. You can be like, go to the counterpart of the school that gave you more scholarship, less scholarship, and be like, this school gave me more scholarship. What about you guys? And the good thing for you is they don't know what the other school gave you. They might ask if it's of you, but you can always be like, this school gave me this. They'll ask you for verification. Don't lie, because it's gonna backfire in a big way. But you can be like, okay, this school gave me 70%. I want to go to your school. That school will give you that percent. And then you can come back to the other school and be like, this school gave me this much. How about you guys? And the target number is you want to get as close to 100%. And this is an art. I did this more for my medical school experience than my undergraduate experience. But I will say that in undergrad it's much easier because there's a lot more schools. So this will take a little bit of, curating and writing skills, which I can help you guys with. But for medical school, it's insanely difficult to get scholarships. Undergrad scholarships are readily available. I would say medical school scholarships are just unheard of. And I negotiated my way from 35% to 100%. So it is a art. It's kind of an art, and the better you write, the more you can articulate your need, and that's an extremely important writing skill. If you don't have that, you won't convey your experiences, and that will backfire. So Abel, maybe you were trying get me to reveal my secret, but yeah, that's negotiating is one of the ways that you can get a full scholarship. The other way is traditional. You apply CSS, they see your financial profile, and they're like, okay, this kid needs money. We have to give him money to come here. So they dump all the money on you. That's the easy way. You don't have to do anything basically after that. But I will say filling out your CSS is much more complicated these days than it was at that time. I'll defer to my younger counterparts, but I will say that BCP can help you fill out. Personally, many people also ask me, should I include this bank statement? Should I do that? Should I do that? So it's a very case-by-case basis. So I don't want to opine on your situation without knowing you, but I will say that we can work with you on a case-by-case basis. And I feel like I've been talking too much, so I'm going to shut up. Goodness, you can continue.
Are we still talking about financial aid, or is there a new question?
Yes, financially. So just trying to lead students in the chat know what does because Yale really gives generous scholarships. So if you could please share what it really entails, the scholarship you got at Yale.
Okay. Okay, so my scholarship at Yale was 100% traditional. So you just go to the CSS profile, you apply through that, they give you, you take it. Obviously, you'd be able to negotiate, but I was fortunate enough to receive a full scholarship, so I didn't have to negotiate. So yeah, it just follows the same thing that both Abil and Elias mentioned. These need blind schools will do anything for you to come there, and based on your financial need on the CSS profile, they will give you however much you need. Even if you need to appeal it later on, they will let you, and it's going to be completely fine. Outside the large universities, one university I would like to bring to everyone's attention is called Augustana College. It is in Rock Island in Chicago, a small town called Rock Island. And this college not only accepts lots of Ethiopian students, but it is pretty generous in terms of scholarships. However, generous is a very subjective term because Augustana is the type of university that will give you a lot of scholarships, but after a certain threshold, no matter what you say, they will not give you any more. So typically this threshold is around $20,000 to $25,000. They will ask you to pay about this much out of the $75,000 tuition fee. Whether or not this is within your scope is depends on your situation. For those of you that it is, it could be a good backup option. But for those of you that this is not in your scope, it's maybe not worth applying because like I said, no matter what happens, you will never get anything below 20,000 at this college. Other than that, the art of negotiating is super useful, like Elias mentioned. Sometimes
You're disrupting everyone.
it's okay. So what I was saying is the art of negotiating is very useful. I have a cousin who negotiated her way into a 100% scholarship at a big university. So you need to be able to negotiate in a way that doesn't give away the fact that you're sort of playing between your chances. For example, when you send an email to one university, you don't want to go like, I have 100% scholarship here. Why can't you do the same? Because then they're just going to say, why don't you go there? So you bring it down step by step by step. For example, if one university gave you 50% and another gave you 65, you go to this 50% when you say, I have 65, can you lower it for me? And when they give you 70, you go back to the other one and you say, can you lower it to 80 or something? And you just go step by step. Some universities do have a threshold where they will not lower it no matter what, so beware of these. It all depends on their own policies, and it's not a definite list of unis. Other than that, the financial process for the big universities is straightforward. You need the CSS profile. You need to send in your parents' proof of income. Notice I said proof of income and not bank statements. The big universities use your parents' proof of income or your parents' salaries as a way to calculate your financial need. Bank statements are only required later on when you're ready to apply for a visa. And this is only to prove that you're able to pay the first year only. So at the beginning, you're just going to be required to upload proof of income. You're not going to be asked proof of your expenses. However, you will be asked to list those expenses on the CSS profile. The CSS profile in itself is a very detailed form, and I'm sure there are plenty of guides on that for the internet. That's pretty much all there is to know from my experience for financial aid.
Okay, if we could move on to now, could you please share your scholarship details with us?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think mine is also very similar to Caduceus, and that it was pretty much a traditional 100% scholarship. But I think it's also kind of important to note that in many of these schools, especially the Ivy Leagues and I don't know, like Stanford and MIT and these big shot, hot shot schools, I think the important thing to remember is that their financial aids are really, really good, right? And in some cases, I think I've read that if your income is less than $75,000 or $60,000 a year, then you would definitely, they'll give you 100% scholarships pretty much, especially for Yale. I read that somewhere, but so that kind of shows you how far and well endowed some of these schools are. So it's definitely the case for me in that I got I mean, room, board, I guess everything else. They even gave me pocket money for my scholarship. And though I applied for it, it was through the CSS profile as well. And I do think that's one of the more kind of trickier forms to fill out, because a lot of it is based on speculation. There aren't really exact numbers, and I was pretty much worried about like what should I put on here and stuff. So I didn't have really much of a guidance in that process, but definitely reaching out to the college, to your college admissions officers and asking them anything you particularly do not understand will be really helpful instead of like messing it up somewhere down the road. So what Good said was also right. It's proof of income. You'll be asked about salaries, about, I don't know, tax rates. You'll be asked about like, the taxes you've paid. In some cases, maybe bank statements, but not really as important. It depends on the school. But yeah, filling out that form, especially use the internet, I would say it's really important as well. Kind of Google stuff you don't really understand, or be in close contact with your admissions officers for those scholarships. Yeah, and again, the art of negotiating, I think I've seen it happen at the undergrad level as well. I was one of like I was not really a friend, but I was a guy from my school. It was like 3 years ago, I think. Got into a couple schools that didn't really provide him with enough financial aid. Kind of talked his way into a threshold he can really afford. So definitely negotiating is something that you can do, but it's an art to be learned. You can't just be vague with it. And it's like, well, you're like, oh, if you got into that school, why not go there instead? So you'd have to be very subtle with it. You'd have to be very careful with what you say. Every word pretty much matters. So yeah, and I think in most cases for the undergraduate degree, you would probably go the traditional route, meaning you fill out this CSS profile and submit that. And another thing I would like to add was the CSS profile is that the earlier you fill it out, the earlier you'll get your financial aid. Meaning I've had some friends who pretty much got into Yale as well, but didn't really fill out their financial aid information much until later. So they weren't really sure if they could afford it. So it was pretty speculative. So filling that CSS form out early and getting your financial aid decisions earlier will kind of allow you to make sure that you can actually afford it and commit and see if you have to apply to any other colleges or other scholarships. So make sure that you get your CSS forms in as early as possible. That doesn't mean get it by November 1 or the deadline, but somewhere before the early action decisions, if you apply to early action decision school, will be very beneficial. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, Manu, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I also didn't negotiate. My financial aid process was traditional, so I applied through the CSS like everyone else, and I received close to 100% scholarship. I do have to pay for my plane tickets and stuff, but I do have all my build expenses are covered, and I also have a and stuff. So that's the financial aid. I didn't really negotiate. I don't know about that at all. And I think the important thing to know is that Yale offers need-based financial aid. So getting a full scholarship it doesn't depend on your merits. So it's not a merits-based scholarship. As long as you're accepted, you apply through the CSS and they kind of estimate your need based on your family's financial background, and they give you whatever you need. So it's not really a merits thing. I don't think Yale offers merit scholarships. It's 100% need-based. So that's how I got my scholarship.
Jim, we have 4 minutes. I want to respect everybody's time. As a closing statement, we're going to take much longer than that if we do that. So maybe me and Abel can say a little bit about what ECP does and close it out. Abel, what do you think? Okay, so since everybody's here.
Yeah, we definitely can do that. Maybe just a couple of minutes after that for a quick Q&A, because the students had a lot of questions. So yeah, we can do that. I'll start off with you.
Yeah, so I will say that ECP was like a love child of people trying to protect people from being taken advantage of. especially in Ethiopia when people promise you a lot of stuff without no substance. So this is an institution that basically is like trying to give you the most for your each money that each birr that you spend with us. Also, I was about to say dollar. That's why I was stuttering. But my point is, if you come with us and like we'll use any of our services, and we have the SAT course, you can go through private tutoring. We can help you edit your essays, and we can help you like pay for your SAT and Duolingo and all the other programs as well. So I basically handle that, but you have to go through Abel for payments. But we have those programs. So as the summer SAT comes up, we also can help you pay for that if you don't have access to credit cards and stuff like that. And you can pay with birr and get access to those services in the US. Other than that, I think we have an insanely capable team. I would argue some of the best, if not the best, people who've scored insanely high on their SAT.
Definitely the best. I'll correct you on that. Definitely the best.
And people who've gotten not only full scholarship, but can help. I would say the thing that makes this group is very distinct is we not only look for people who are good, and scoring really high and getting accepted, but people who also are passionate about lending their ideas and letting others pick their brain. I think that's a very defining factor of what we're trying to create. Hopefully you'll stick with us. We have social medias, we have TikTok, Instagram, and also our website, ethiocollegeprep.com. Our email is ethiocollegeprep@gmail.com. So make sure you get plugged in, and I'll leave it to Abel. I have to go. I planned 2 hours for this, but feel free to reach out on Telegram and other social media. Very nice to meet you all, and good news. Now I'm on it. When you guys come here, let me know. I'm gonna be. I'm in the Midwest, but would love to get connected with you guys once you arrive here as well.
Yeah, I can start the next part on my side.
Perfect. Ciao, guys. Have a great day.
All right. See you guys. Yeah, just a couple of things to add to what Aya said. We provide guidance on everything related to college application process, American Canadian college application process, and it's all based on experience. As you guys have seen, Elias is one of our head advisors in terms of essays and basically non-test prep related advice, and he has received a full scholarship at University of Michigan, and our SAT prep team is also unquestionably the best. If you guys have seen on our website, we have a really insane team of high scoring instructors who not only have the know-how and have scored high on the exam, but have also really powerful way of teaching and explaining their ideas. And the average team we have, the average score we have at ECP tutors currently at the moment is 1520, and that's just the average. So in terms of SAT prep and college applications, if any of you guys are considering getting help, we got you. You can check out more details on our website, but our upcoming main service would be our summer SAT course. Will be our summer SAT course, which starts on July 4th, and that's also all on the website. Kadus will be teaching there. We'll have Aimano too, and hopefully Nahum there too, and we'll have really in-depth tutoring for your SAT prep. And after that, we'll also have a course called a college application course, which teaches you everything you need to know about the college applications, starting from college search all the way up to your visa. And in between, we include essays, Common App recommendations, transcripts, financial aid applications, CSS, ISFA, and ICF. So that's the plan for this summer too, after the SAT course. So we have really in-depth thing planned for the summer. You guys can check more of it on our website. Okay, but yeah, we have hit our time. So if you guys have now, I'm going to say I'm on it. If you guys have a couple of minutes, I'll just open it up for questions, and we will end it in maybe 10-15 minutes. So if you guys have any questions, please shout them out now in the chat, and we'll have Kadus Naomi and Hamad to answer your questions.
Wait, I want to answer this one because I've seen it kind of pop up a lot in regards to the TOEFL and IELTS and any of these English proficiency exams. I mean, as an international student, it's definitely advised that you take it. In most cases, it's actually required. So unless, of course, you are exempt from this, if you've done like 4 years of high school instruction in English, or you've taken an AP course or an IB course in English. So I think those are, you can be exempt for those, but checking those, I don't know, requirements on the college website and to see if they are want the TOEFL or the IELTS would be very important. And it's not really a tough process going through the TOEFL. I don't think it's much simpler than the SAT in terms of like the studying you have to do and the preparation you have to do. But nonetheless, if you can, I don't know, if you have time to do it, or if you can afford to do it, or if your college requires it, I would definitely recommend to take the TOEFL. Because as an international student, I think I just touched on this previously, any additional bit of evidence that shows you are competent is very, very great. It would be very, very helpful. So taking any of these exams, if you can, or kind of going the extra mile to prove your, I don't know, prove your worth, so to speak, would be very beneficial to you in the long run. So that's what I'd have to say. But I did take the TOEFL. Yes, I did take it in August of 2021.
Just to add on what Nahom said about English proficiency tests, yes, it is definitely recommended as an international student. Even if I, for example, learned all 4 years of high school where the main language of instruction was English, I still did take an English proficiency test because there's no way it can hurt your chances, especially if you get a good score. As for whether you take TOEFL or IELTS, I actually didn't take either. I took the Duolingo English test, which is now getting accepted by more and more universities in the United States. Almost all of them actually, except for maybe a select few, maybe 3 or 4. The reason I prefer the Duolingo English test is it is much cheaper than TOEFL, for example. TOEFL is 5 times as expensive usually. Duolingo is also much more convenient to take. If you have a laptop and an internet connection, you can just sit at home and take it there. You don't have to go to any kind of test center. And finally, the Duolingo English test is easier. In my experience, I have read about students that have taken both TOEFL and the DET. Duolingo ends up being much more easier. It is also shorter to take, taking about maybe an hour, whereas TOEFL takes 3 hours over the course of several days. IELTS takes several days for the speaking tests and everything. So I would definitely recommend Duolingo.
Yeah, I don't know much about Duolingo, so I'd need to this. But I would have to say, when I took the TOEFL, it is definitely a very taxing one. You do have to do some prep to kind of get yourself acclimated with the structure of the exam, and especially, and it's very taxing, meaning you have a reading, a listening, and a speaking and a writing section. So be prepared. It's going to be one hell of like a weekend for you if you do take the TOEFL. So kind of getting yourself in that right mindset of when choosing that, which English proficiency test to take is really important. And again, I think the more research you do on these tests, I think the better your chances are of making an informed decision. So do your research. I think that's what I want to stress, really important.
Okay, we have a question for Haymanot. I guess it's directly to Haymanot. So I want if you're gonna answer Galila Million's question. I have some intentions, like I'm studying astronomy. Hope you would guide me. Oh, that's actually not a question, just a statement. Okay, moving on. So do you have any exceptional policy for students who cannot afford to pay for ECP and or planning to apply test optional? Yeah, so if you're planning on applying test optional, I guess a better option would be for you to participate in our essay editing service or our college application course, like I said, which shows you, which teaches you the exact process involved in the college application, so you can stay ahead of every step of the journey. So those services are what I would suggest. You can learn more on our websites. Okay, we have next question. Let's rotate. So I'm on if you can please answer Magdas Adisu's question.
I'm not sure what she means by an entrance exam, like an ACT or something, or do you mean the Maastricht secondary school leaving exam? If you mean Maastricht, I don't think they need Maastricht. I submitted my Maastricht course because I already had them when I applied, but I don't. By the time you apply, you don't really have your Maastricht course because you're in beginning your 12th grade, so you don't need them to apply, and I don't think they would ask for them after you've applied too. They just ask for your second semester transcripts. They don't really need the secondary school leaving exam, the Maastricht.
First one is on the chat. Which do you think is the most fruitful part of your application, or which made you stand out participating in YYGS? Okay, so for my personal experience, and this is the experience for more students, the main thing that's going to make you stand out is being authentic to yourself. Be yourself. Believe me, I know this sounds like generic advice. I cannot even begin to describe how much I hated hearing it because it wasn't specific enough. But at the end of the day, when you've gone through the whole process, it becomes clear to you how it's the perfect advice. When you write your essays, you need to be able to be talking about something specific that could only apply to you. For example, if you would do something like I did and about your hobby, which is cooking, I enjoy cooking. 5,000 other students are going to say the same thing, but why is cooking special to you? What makes it unique to you? That dimension of your essay is gonna be the thing that makes you stand out. You say you want to study engineering. Why? Many other people want to study engineering. Many other people want to study liberal arts or astronomy. But why do you want to study? That's the key question you need to answer. And most of the time, admissions officers are looking for a very unique experience. For example, I've read an essay about a student that wanted to study astronomy because when he was young, he once went on a field trip to an observatory where his teacher explained to him how the stars work and how there might be alien life out there, and that sparked his future interest. This could be the story for many other students, but not many students are going to think to use this as their key selling point. They might say they want to study engineering because it's fun, or maybe because they like the challenge. Believe it or not, I've even read about a student that wrote that despite their difficulty in math, they would still love engineering, which makes no sense. How can you study engineering when you have challenges with math? So you really need to be able to sell why your story matters, because that's what the admissions officer wants to know. Why do you matter? Who are you? And the better you're able to describe that, the higher your chances of acceptance.
Okay, so there's another question in the chat, which went describing what we want, that we want double major. That seems opposite fields. How does that negatively affect your application? I wouldn't say it affects it negatively at all, as long as you can provide some sort of rationale as to why you want to study both, because there will be a section that just asks you to explain why exactly you want to apply to that specific major at that school. So I applied for computer science and ecology and evolutionary biology, so which is like insanely polar. It's very 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 different, but I think I was kind of being able to explain why I'm interested in both fields would be very important, and I don't think it affects your application negatively at all. It might even be a great selling point depending on how you phrase it, or depending on how you approach it or explain it to your admissions officer in your application. So definitely not, I would say,
There is one question in the chat that says, I want to double major in computer science and physics. Is this hard? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's probably gonna be hell, literal hell. It's gonna be impossibly difficult to deal with all of that. But of course, like any other thing, hard work makes it possible. I myself am considering double majoring in astrophysics and mechanical engineering, and maybe you all see online internet stories about how difficult engineering is, but of course that doesn't stop me because I truly love engineering and I truly love astrophysics as well. If you genuinely enjoy the subjects that you're thinking of double majoring in, despite the difficulty, you will definitely be able to pull through.
But yeah, I mean, any kind of major is particularly difficult, especially if you're not willing to put in the work for it. So it's not necessarily contingent on what major you pick specifically or what combination of double majors you do. More has to do with the kind of work ethic you have and especially your interest or proclivity towards that subject. So I do think it just made a really great point which is you really have to work hard for any major. And there's no way around that, so to speak. And if you're hard interested or if you're passionate about the major, I think you're more likely to not hate the work or you're very likely to kind of enjoy the work you put in despite it being hard. So I would say pick something you're really interested in. So that really helps.
Yeah, to add to that, I don't think you have to declare your major. I think maybe after you finish your first year, at least at Yale, you don't declare your major until your sophomore year, I think. So even though you want to double major, you can like see the pace of the classes, you can take classes. And if it's too hard for you, you can just decide to major in one of them instead of double majoring. So I think most schools are like that. They don't require you to major to declare your major as soon as you get there. So you can just take classes, experience the classes, and turn on.
Yeah, to add on what Haimanut said, Yale will usually ask you to pick 3 academic areas you're interested in when you apply. So you could say maybe engineering, math, and possibly history. And then you'd be required to write a short essay on what interests you about these 3 topics. This is one of the Yale supplemental essays. But once you get accepted, none of these choices are binding. You're admitted as a student that has no major, as if you said undecided on your application. And then you're allowed your first year to explore, maybe second. If you want to major in a science subject, you'd usually have to declare your major in the second year. However, if you want to major in a social science or a liberal arts subject, you can wait even up to your third year before declaring your major. Other than that, one thing I would like to point out is do not confuse standing out with fitting in. You would want to stand out from all your competitors when you're applying, but at the same time, you'd want to fit in to the community at Yale, to the culture, to the lifestyle. And this goes for any other university that you want to apply to. At the end of the day, the main thing that gets you accepted into these universities is whether or not you fit into the sphere that they have. And half of this job is up to you. You need to be able to assess if you can fit in. And you need to save yourself and your admissions officer's time by choosing not to apply to universities that you feel that you do not fit into.
I think that's all the questions right now. So any final questions?
So we have a question from Amir and Naul.
Okay, I think they're very similar questions in terms of like you're pretty much early in the process. I think grade 10 is a bit different from grade 11, but in grade 10, I think really focusing on trying to get those extracurriculars in would be a good idea. And also starting early with the research process would be a good idea. Kind of understanding what colleges are, what scholarship opportunities you might have, what financially specific colleges are. Maybe make a spreadsheet and kind of document your research. Maybe you could also do that. And also attending like admissions office webinars would be good at this stage, kind of get an idea of what colleges are like and to hear from admissions officers. So in 10th grade, I would definitely be more geared towards kind of getting your grades up, participating in those extracurricular activities, and yeah, I'm pretty much looking at into colleges and researching. In grade 11, I think mostly looking at, especially if you're starting 11th grade, then it would be more like registering and studying for the standardized exams, maybe narrowing your college list, maybe looking at leadership positions within your extracurricular activities and all of that. But as you near towards 11th grade, you should probably kind of try and complete your standardized tests. And if you're planning on applying early, I mean, so I would definitely kind of view it as a progression kind of thing. Yeah, that's what I would say. More questions in the chat.
Gadus, if you're available, want to take the next one?
I can take the next one and he can take the next one. He comes back.
Okay, definitely.
Which one is the next one? If the college says it's SAT optional and you applied for it, are you going to be disadvantaged than those you submit your SAT? Like, here's the thing with these kind of like optional advices. Like, I heard from a statistic in Emory that 80% of the people that were accepted were not SAT optional, and I think that it is statistics that works for many of the colleges. But so I would definitely not go SAT optional, especially if you can afford it, and especially if you can prepare definitely for it. So I would not be partial to the SAT optional idea. Maybe it works better for, say, I don't know, US students or domestic students in US, but definitely not international students where you're trying to kind of squeeze out every ounce of possibility you could possibly get. So I would not recommend SAT optional, but if you cannot take it and if your scores are probably too low for the college you're looking at, then perhaps SAT optional might be the way to go, but definitely not recommended though. No, I did not apply SAT optional.
Yeah, if you guys have been here from the start, every panelist here right here, we're sharing their ACT experience. Everyone here has taken the SAT and scored high on it. Okay, we're going way over time, so I guess I will try to answer this last question and I end it there. So Haimant, want to take the last question?
Okay, so yeah, how did you say? So I don't think, if you're talking about the YYA's programs, I didn't take that. Kadus and Nahum took that, but I didn't really take any summer programs. I just volunteered in some charity organizations, and I did internships and stuff like that. I didn't have summer programs. So I was actually accepted into Yale and Cornell, and I chose Yale over Cornell.
I mean, to add on to that, I think it's a really good point, which is rejection is probably going to come in some form or another. So I would definitely apply, encourage applying to as many colleges as you possibly can. This is what people in the internet call shotgunning, which is you're trying to apply to as many colleges as possible and try your chances there. but you do have to be kind of careful to kind of make each one personalized and stuff. It's going to be a lot of work, but at the end, I think you'll find it really rewarding. But for summer programs, I think the main thing was summer programs, because I know that a couple of people who did the same programs as me who had as stellar extracurriculars, but kind of the summer programs did not necessarily help them. On the contrary, I know people who used this summer program for another college, and they managed to do just as fine. Which is, you got to be able to kind of explain how the summer program helped you. It's not necessarily I attended this, so I am good, so accept me. It's more like, through attending this, I was able to learn this, which I did, which enabled me to do this, and I want to do more of this at your college. So this is how I would approach it. So summer programs and any of internship experience or any work experience you might have is good, but you'd have to kind of say how you benefited from that and how you might want to continue on that during college. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
So I think I didn't answer the why part of my question. The things that I considered when choosing a college was financial aid and the student life and like the campus environment and stuff. So I think the basic thing you have to do is talk to people who are going to those colleges. And I talked to people and I researched about the financial aid packages I got from both schools and I compared them. I talked to students and like learned more about the student life. And that's what made me decide. So I think that's what made, if you could find people who are going to those colleges, talking to them is very important in choosing colleges, I think.
All right. So yeah, we have gone way over time. I guess that will be it for today. Highly appreciate you guys, Nahum, Kadus, and Haimanot, for taking a time out of your day and sharing your experience with everyone. Hopefully, once you guys have started learning at Yale, and if you are able to successfully manage the intense schedule you will have with double majors and even single majors, because Yale is really intense in its studies. So if you're able to make some time, we'll try to have a part 2 and share the college experience with students. But for today, really appreciate you guys doing this. If you guys have any last words you want to share with the audience before we close it out, I will open it for that.
No matter what happened today, even if you did everything right according to what we advised you, for whatever reason, anything could go wrong. So please do not get disappointed. Do not get your hopes way too high. At the end of the day, it could literally be a coin toss. Sometimes universities could reject a student because they don't want a person who plays the guitar and accept a student because they want a person who plays the piano. It could pretty much just get down to that. So when it comes to these small differences, you never know. So please don't get disappointed and try your best to be authentic to yourself and to make your story stand out.
So my advice, my last words is the first thing is to start early. Some of you are in 9th or 10th grade, and that's a really good time to start this whole process. To start at least learning about the whole process and like learning about what tests you should take and doing your college search and all of that. So start as early as possible. And the other thing is keep yourself on top of deadlines. So once those deadlines approach, it kind of gets pretty stressful. So maybe try to set deadlines for yourself and like keep yourself from procrastinating. And the other advice I would take is it is important to work hard for this whole application process, but there's also a huge factor of luck in this whole process. So don't be too hard on yourself. Be hopeful and like try your best, but don't be too hard on yourself. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Yeah. So that would be it for today, guys. Thank you guys again. Noam Kutus and Amanut for doing this. Everyone in the audience, hope you got value of this out of this. Hope you guys took notes and really applied a lot of the lessons you have learned from this session. There were a lot of very important and crucial things being discussed. So make sure to apply what you have learned, but that will be it for today. We'll see you guys in the next event we have at TCP. But yeah, that's it for today. Okay, bye-bye, guys.